This film is one that you don't forget easily, and it's one that I think can change a person's perspective, not just on the homeless situation, but also the situation of immigrants in this country as well. When you set out to write and direct this, did you have an agenda of, I want to shape people's view for the better?
No, not really. I have an agenda. I feel that there's this urgent issue, which is judgment. I feel like I'm living in a world that has this increasing grey area, but that the culture I live in is getting more and more entrenched in black and white positions, and I think it's really dangerous and going to kill us all. So I just wanted to write a film about that, really, and I didn't know what shape that would take. I wanted it to be a love story, and I thought I would write two characters who were on the page unforgivable, and then make you love them. And because, you know, everybody sort of should be afforded forgiveness and things like that. And then it became about a homeless couple, because there was around the same time as that was percolating in my head, Hurricane Sandy hit New York in 2012. That's 2012, right? And there had been a homeless couple that lived right outside my building, and initially when they moved to the block, I had been talking to them. I would pass them every day. They became part of my daily routine with the kids going to school, and I guess I became part of their daily life in some way. I don't know. And then I stopped being able to see them somehow, and I became blind to them somehow. Their poverty became more and more acceptable, and they became part of the landscape of New York. And then I didn't notice them until they were gone. I mean, actually gone. Sure. And I felt sort of shame surrounding that. And then I thought, well, maybe that's... And I had an instinct to write about them, and I thought maybe that would be a good template for which to discuss judgment, because I think our response to homelessness is puzzling.
And I think people typically feel the need to believe that it's something they are doing to be in that situation, that if they just made different choices, they would get out of it.
I think that's correct. I think that there is a peculiar fear that is engendered by it. You know, that you must have done something to bring yourself so low, because if you haven't, that means it could happen to me, and that's terrifying. And the truth is, you know, my father was a very religious man, and I'm not, but he used to say, "There but for the grace of God go I," when we passed a homeless person. And I love that sentiment, because it's an admission of how precarious life is and how it could so easily be us, you know.
Of course. Speaking of that, there is a religious element, not a heavy-handed message religious element, but I think an interesting understanding and exploration of that in the film as well.
Yeah, there were, you know, I think I wanted to write something that felt current to me, you know. At the time, as I was writing it 3 years ago, people weren't talking about Boko Haram. People weren't talking about the refugee crisis that was building up steam, and now they are. And also, you know, there's a huge faith debate that is going on. So I just wanted these are the stories that fill my daily reading when I get up and I read the paper. I see these stories every day, so I wanted them to be in it. But I didn't want it to be a message piece. I had no interest in writing a film that said homelessness is bad, or drug addiction is bad, or anybody living with either of those, you know, circumstances are criminals or victims. I just really wanted to understand their predicament a little better. That's all.
Well, I think the face of homelessness has changed so much within the last 10 years. It looked one singular way, and now it could be. So many people are one step away from that, especially in a city like New York. you know.
Yeah, I mean, there is no right to legal counsel at housing court in New York. Um, if you're a family facing eviction, you're 80% less likely to be evicted if you have legal counsel. Legal counsel would cost the city $12,500. The average stay once evicted of a homeless family costs the city $45,000. So not only does it seem to be morally the correct thing to do, it also fiscally seems like a wise choice. However, there are 60,000 homeless people in shelters every night in New York City. 24,000 of them tonight will be children, 19,000 of them women. Half of the homeless population are families. These are extraordinary figures in a city home to more billionaires than any other city on earth. However, those numbers can be... I've been living and bleeding into this for 3 years, and so I have the figures in my head, but I understand that they can be baffling and numbing even. And the strange thing happens with narrative, that numbers become more meaningful the smaller they are. So that is why Shelter's about 2 people who really need forgiveness and find it in each other.
When you have a project like this that is sparked through creativity and passion and the inspiration of the couple outside of your home, once you start to research and look into the facts and figures of it all, how does that change your creative impulses, but because you are incorporating some factual elements, or at least they're in the back of your mind?
Oh, hugely. I decided it was going to be about a homeless couple. I got in contact with the Coalition for the Homeless, who are real life angels on the streets in New York City, and they supply meals, they supply education, they are advocates, they even supply this it's a beautiful idea, it's this summer camp for the children of homeless families to afford them some respite. And I started talking to them. I wanted to know what sort of bureaucracy is in place to stop a needy person getting what they need, because if you read the literature, there should be no needy people, but obviously there are needy people, and they were incredibly informative and really generous with their time. They got me out on the street meeting homeless people. They vetted my script for truth, so that's what it meant.
Of course. One thing about this story too is there are a lot of the story depends on the elements, if you will. There's the snow later on in the film, but then at the beginning there's these beautiful green parks. It's not shot through this gritty lens that you would expect a story like this to be shot.
Yeah.
So when you're writing it, how much do you put in place about what's going to happen with the weather? Because obviously as a director, you can't necessarily control those things when you get on set.
Oh, well, we couldn't. It was 90 degrees during the shoot, so all the snow is fake.
Gosh.
We faked all of that, and the breath and everything. Yeah, snow. The storm at the end of the movie is my monster. If it was a monster pick, it would be the New York City winter. Anybody who's been here for the last 2 years.
If you're not homeless, everybody can relate to.
So, and the reason why the film has been delayed in coming out is, they wanted to release it in spring, and I said, I'm afraid people don't think about homelessness till Thanksgiving, when it starts getting chilly, and people start thinking about their homeless brothers and sisters and their neighbors. So that's why it's coming out now.